Welcome back to Bucket Bites here on the Coaching Bucket channel. And as part of the Views from the Bucket podcast, these are Bucket Bites where these are specifically for you coaches, just little bites of things you can take away and utilize with your teams. And today's topic is a important one because it is one that can be evergreen. This is something you can come back to this video 100 times over probably, and that parents can be tough. They can be tough. It can be tough to work with parents. I'm very lucky with the most recent parent group I've had, but it is something that I've seen. It is something that I've heard horror stories. It is something that I have seen out there in the world of baseball that you have to deal with as a coach. And most of the time it's around playing time, but sometimes it's around other things, relationships within the game, thinking there's favoritism going on. Coach has a kid on the team and coach is favoring his kid or her kid. Listen, I do know that does happen, but sometimes it's just the appearance of that happening because it's quite possible that the coach's kid is very good. And if that's the case, they may play more, especially in rep baseball. So let's talk about this. Bucket Bites, parents.
Views from the Bucket.
All right, here we are, Bucket Bites. We're talking parents. We're talking playing time. We're talking how to deal with this stuff. Okay, so let's just get right into it. Biggest thing: set clear expectations from the start. Once you've selected your team, once your tryouts are over, have a parent meeting right away. Right away, have a parent agreement ready to go. Have a coaching guide or a parent guide to the season ready to go. It doesn't have to be long. It can be 5 pages. It can be 100 pages, but ideally it's not that long because they won't read it. Have a 5-page parent guide that says, look, this is what we're doing. These are the tournaments we're in. These are how the playoffs work. These are how the provincial or state championships work. This is how I'm going to coach. This is my philosophy. This is what the roles are of all of our assistant coaches. And then have a whole section on what's expected of parents. And that is something that you want them to sign. So I have a parent agreement. Make sure you do too. Because it gives you the ability to say how you're going to manage a team. So let me just tell you how I manage. Regular season, if you now I'm going to tell you from a perspective of regular baseball. So if you're still at a level where you bat everyone, that's a different story because everybody bats. You'll probably make up your playing time in the field as evenly as possible, and that's what I always said I would do. But in its spot where we now have to have substitutions throughout the game, it gets a little bit more complicated. However, I set the expectation that if you start today's game, you will probably play 3 to 4, maybe 5 innings, depending on the game. And if it's a regular season game, every single player will get into the game. It doesn't mean you will start, but it does mean that you will get into that game before that game is over. And if the game is looking like it's going to be a mercy or something that ends it early, I will try to still get you in. I'll just try to get you in earlier. Okay. So that is something that I put in a parent agreement and let them know. Regular season, this is what I'm going to do. Exhibition, this is what I'm going to do. Right. And if you don't start today's game, you're going to start the next game. Okay. That's one of my big things too. If I didn't start you today, you'll start somewhere in the next game. Okay. Even though you got that playing time even. But that's regular season, even at rep ball. Okay. Now, when we get to the travel ball side of things, where we're going to tournaments and we're trying to win, the reality may be that the playing time is not even. We are going to ride the hot hand, and I will put that in agreement. I will put that in that parent agreement at the beginning of the year that if your child has not earned the playing time through results, they will still get into every game because I still make that very important. It is youth baseball after all, and they do have to learn, but they may not get into the 6th inning. They may not get into the 5th inning. And that may be because we are in a tight game and we need to have our best defense out there, or we need to have our best offense out there. And you as a parent need to understand that, right? Same thing with playoffs and any kind of state championship, provincial championship, whatever you're in, North America. Obviously, we know there's a lot of these different opportunities for the players to go to. Again, you're on a rep team. In any other sport, they're going to play the hot hand. But for some reason at baseball, it seems like players and parents complain more. Playing time seems to be more of a contentious issue in baseball than it does in some of the other sports. Some of the other sports, the expectation is set. If you're a third string person on some other team, you're third string, just the way it is. And that, congratulations, you made the team, but you're third string and you're going to sit most of the time. Um, for baseball, you try that and you get mutiny on parent groups. So it's a big thing to make sure you set that expectation out of the gate. Then you need to set the expectation about if you don't like something. Like, don't come running to me at the end of the game, get in my face. I'm not even going to have a conversation with you if that happens. If you come anywhere near getting in my face, I will walk away and I will not say a word and I will not respond to a single question you ask, because the reality is the parents need a 24-hour rule. They need to be able to hold their complaint for 24 hours and then make the complaint. It's the same thing we always say to coaches, the same development that you get from USA Baseball, from Baseball Canada, whoever you're learning from. The first thing they tell you is if there's an issue, try to make sure that there's a 24-hour rule in place, because you're just more angry than you should be. It's just the way it works when it's initial, right? So same with the parents. They need a 24-hour rule. You still have a problem after you've slept on it, then bring it to a parent rep. And that's the next thing. The biggest thing for the cooling off period is to make sure that there's also a channel of communication that isn't necessarily you, right? It should be a parent rep. We've had some great parent reps on our teams, and they filter a lot of the crap that comes out of there, right? Like, a lot of times these parents aren't really thinking when they write things and when they're thinking of things, and they don't know the game very well as well. So that's another thing. You're going to find there are a lot of parents that do not actually know this game very well. And that could be what contributes to the fact that in other sports, they seem to accept the third string player as that's what my kid is. In baseball, it's a little tougher, because success in baseball could come in many different ways, whether that's defensively, whether that's, laying down a great bunt, whether that's, hitting, all of that stuff, pitching. You might be successful in one thing, but not successful in the other three. So we can't play you right now. Like, we can't play you right now because you're not going to do the one thing you are successful in. Let's say that's pitching. And so your defense and everything is a little shaky. I don't want to put you out there in a situation that could cost us the game. So, but parents don't always understand that. They don't understand the game itself, right? So this is why in baseball, a parent rep is so much more important. A parent rep can have a conversation with the parent, make sure they understand what the concern or complaint is, and then try to relay that to the coach, where the coach can then relay an explanation back through the parent rep, right? And hopefully diffuse the situation as quickly as possible through that rep. But the biggest thing is, if you do get to address a parent one-on-one, address those concerns one-on-one with fact-based feedback. Look, here's the situation, right? This is why I always encourage, make sure, I know a lot of people have game changer, things like that. Be a little careful with that, because if you have a parent running that, maybe the stats are a little off. Somebody has more hits than they should, things like that, a lot more errors. But if you do have a chart or something that helps you decide on what the feedback should be, it's going to be helpful. It's going to be helpful, saying, in the last few games, there's been about 5-6 errors. It's been a rough go at the plate for the last couple games, things like that. That's the reason I made that decision. Use those fact-based pieces in your conversation. And if you do have a parental policy, enforce it too. Like, I mean, this is the thing. If you've said you have to give 24 hours, enforce that. If you have said, this is what we're going to do, and it's in the parent agreement, and this is how I manage a playoff game, I'm not having this conversation with you. And the reason I'm not is because you agreed. You signed off on it. I'm not having this conversation. So that's allowed, and that's okay, as long as you've set that expectation at the beginning of the season, as long as you've put a parent agreement together. Just refer them back to that and say, if you have any more problems, contact the league, because you're not getting anything from me. The other thing is, stay consistent and fair. You do have to think about it. I mean, it is their kid, right? So make sure it's consistent for everyone. If you have a coach's kid, for example, who's struggling and, normally bats third in the lineup, but is struggling right now, make sure they do drop in the lineup. Like, I know you're trusting them to get back to their, but their success, but you're also doing this to other kids, right? Right. Whereas somebody, gets 5 hits, they move up to second in the lineup, they start to struggle, and you put them back to seventh. Make sure you're doing that with your top players too, if they're struggling, right? So have some consistency and be fair. It really does need to be equal treatment for all. If somebody's struggling and you have to make a change and sit them for a bit, and they're normally your power hitter, you got to do it. You got to do it. You got to ride the hot hand all the way around. You can't just do it with 5 players. You have to do it with all players. And then redirect the negative energy. One thing you're going to run into too is there's instigator parents out there as well, right? So this is why a parent rep is so key, because you might get a little group, a little clique form of parents who start to wind each other's clocks. You'll find this at tournaments, especially where they either live together or they're in nearby hotel rooms and they're having a couple of adult beverages, and then now they're talking the coaching staff and what the coaching staff is doing wrong and why we're not winning, and we're obviously not going to win in this tournament, so why don't we let the worst players play just to make it so that we're losing 30-0 by the third inning. Those types of things. No, you're the coach. You signed up for this. You are the one who volunteered. If they want to try it, they can come up and coach. Okay. Again, I respect parents and I respect opinions, but if you don't know what you're talking about, that's what you do. That's what you do. Don't know what you're talking about, don't say a word. And don't instigate other players. I've seen it where parents of the successful players instigate other players who aren't successful as parents. Oh, your kid, I don't think is getting enough playing time. I'm not sure why the coaches don't play your kid. I don't know what. Okay, that parent is a huge problem, and this is again where you have to decide at the tryouts. Do you even take that kid, even though he's successful, because you've got a dad or a mom or somebody who's instigating like that, right? And you may not know that for a year or two. They may be later cuts, but it's something to really consider as a coach. And then the biggest thing is show that you have the player's best interest at heart, which you really do. See, here's the thing. If you leave a picture out there there's an episode of Views from the Bucket that's a great episode. Brian View, dad of Cam View, who made the major leagues, talks about the 56-pitch inning that his son threw to start in Pittsburgh when he started with the Pirates. Go watch that episode. It's episode 2 of the podcast. Great episode, because it talks about, do you leave a player out there to toil away, or do you need to change their success? Do you need to get them out of that position? Do you need to get them into another position? So these are the types of things you got to think about. And that's that sort of focusing on the best interest of the player. Is it good for them to still be out there, right? And you have to ask that question. And then you have to give that as part of the explanation as well. Building a culture of respect is key, especially with those parent instigators. Make sure that they understand how we respect each other as players between each other, how we respect each other as coaches between each other, and how we respect each other as parents as well. Nip parent instigation in the bud, or it will get out of hand, and they will instigate, and they will absolutely talk. Group complaints are ridiculous. Okay. If a parent is instigating others, address it directly with them in private first. Make sure you're talking to them outside of the parent group that they're trying to be a part of, the little clique, and then explain that such behavior can really harm the team environment. It is real. This negativity cannot be tolerated. So that's one thing you have to really, really focus on with parent instigators. And just be proactive as well. And stand your ground. Be proactive. You're the coach. You're the one who's trained in this. You're the one who bothered to get all your coaching courses done. You're the one who bothered to do all of this for these kids. You're looking out for the kids, and you're creating future leaders, future successful kids, right? And that's what sports does, and that's your goal and your job. And as far as the parents are concerned, let them deal with it, right? Let them deal with it. And again, go back to that parent code of conduct. I can't tell you enough. Have a parent code of conduct ready to go from your very first meeting. All of this stuff will protect you against parent complaints, playing time complaints, parent instigators, and more. Thanks for watching. It's Bucket Bites. Go check out Views from the Bucket as well. we'll catch you next time.